I'm Maya, 28 female, and my family just found out about my secret success after deliberately excluding me from my brother's celebration. The truth didn't come from me, whispered in a hushed, forgiving tone over the phone. It came from a giant, glossy banner with my face on it, plastered in the middle of the city for the entire world to see. And that's when the frantic, desperate calls finally began. It all started, as it so often did, with a silence that spoke louder than any argument ever could. I was at my apartment, nursing a cup of tea and debugging a particularly nasty piece of code when my phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat. My thumb swiped over the screen automatically. My mother, Susan, had posted a photo. It was a picture of a restaurant menu, the fancy kind with cursive script and prices that made you wince. The caption read, "Finalizing the menu for Liam's big night, so proud of our graduate." I scrolled up, there were dozens of messages I'd somehow missed over the past few days, a flurry of excitement and planning. "Aunt Carol, can you and Uncle Gene make it for 7? Liam, do they have that steak you like? Dad confirmed the reservation for 12. I counted the names being thrown around. Mom, Dad, Liam, my 2 sets of aunts and uncles, my older cousins, 12 people. A perfect round number that didn't include me. A cold, familiar knot tightened in my stomach. This wasn't a simple oversight. In a family as meticulously planned as ours, nothing was. My mother kept spreadsheets for holiday gift giving, and my father, Mark, a bank manager by trade, treated every family event like a quarterly earnings report. Forgetting a person, especially an immediate family member, was not a clerical error. It was a statement. I waited a day, letting the hurt curdle into a dull ache. I thought maybe, just maybe, a separate invitation was coming, a personal call, a text, but the silence stretched thin and suffocating. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to my parents' house, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I found my father in the garage, polishing his already immaculate sedan. "Hey, Dad," I started, trying to keep my voice light. "I saw Mom's post about the dinner for Liam. It looks nice." He didn't look up from the chrome bumper he was buffing. "It's a good place. Your brother deserves it. 4 years of hard work." The implication hung in the air between us, thick as the smell of car wax. "Unlike you." "I was just wondering," I pressed on, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "I didn't seem to be on the list. Was that a mistake?" He finally stopped, setting his cloth down on a workbench. He turned to face me, and his expression was not apologetic or even surprised. It was flat, dismissive. It was the look he gave me when I tried to explain a complex coding problem, the same look he'd had when I told him I was dropping out of the university he'd been so proud to tell his friends I was attending. "It wasn't a mistake, Maya," he said, and the calmness of his voice was so much worse than shouting. "We didn't think you'd want to come." I blinked. Why wouldn't I want to come celebrate my own brothers? And then came the line, the words that would echo in my head for weeks. "Well," he said with a little shrug, as if explaining something obvious to a child, "it's a university graduation dinner, a celebration of a major academic achievement. We didn't think you'd be comfortable since you barely finished school yourself." Barely finished school. The words landed like stones, each one a memory of a past slight. I was 10, bursting with pride over my first place ribbon from the state science fair for a project on volcanic chain reactions I'd spent months building. When I got home, the house was empty. They were at Liam's soccer tournament, celebrating his Player of the Week trophy, a plastic trinket he'd lose a month later. My ribbon was taped to the fridge with a note that said, "Nice job, sweetie," but they never once asked me to explain my project. I was 17, and after failing my driver's test twice out of sheer nerves, I finally passed. I called them ecstatic. My dad's response was a grunt. "About time," he'd said. "Now you can get a job and start saving for a car." 6 months later, when Liam turned 16, a second-hand but respectable sedan with a giant red bow on it was waiting for him in the driveway. A little freedom for our responsible young man, my dad had beamed. I was 24, working 2 jobs to fund my tech startup. I landed my first major client, a contract that meant I could finally quit my waitressing gig and focus on my company full-time. I called my parents, my voice trembling with excitement. "That's nice, Maya," my dad had said, his voice distant. "Is it a real job, though, with benefits?" "Anyway, you won't believe it. Liam got an A+ on his microeconomics midterm. A+. Barely finished school, he was talking out my decision to leave the four-year university he'd pushed me into, a place where I was drowning in theoretical classes that felt utterly disconnected from the real world. He saw it as a failure, a stain. He refused to see the next step I took, enrolling in a grueling two-year intensive program at a technical college, a place where I found my passion and graduated at the top of my class. He never mentioned that part. In his narrative, I was a dropout. Liam was the success story. Standing there in the garage, I felt a strange and sudden clarity. For years, I had been running a race I was never meant to win, chasing a finish line that they kept moving further and further away. I had contorted myself into knots trying to earn a crumb of the effortless approval they showered on my brother. And for what? To be told I wasn't worthy of sharing a celebratory meal. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of something breaking or maybe something being set free. My father saw it and seemed momentarily confused, expecting tears or anger. I just nodded. "You're right," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I understand completely." I turned to leave, and as I reached the door, I paused and looked back at him. "Then don't worry about my ceremony next month." He just stared, a flicker of something, annoyance, curiosity, in his eyes before it was gone, replaced by the usual indifference. He picked up his polishing cloth. The conversation, as far as he was concerned, was over. But for me, it was the beginning of the end. The 2 weeks that followed were defined by a profound and unnerving quiet. The family group chat, which had been buzzing with exclamation points and happy emojis, fell silent on my end. I muted it. No one seemed to notice. There were no follow-up texts, no concerned calls, no "are you okay" messages from my mother. They had taken my words, "don't worry about my ceremony," as a shield for their own convenience. It was easier to believe I was being difficult than to confront the fact that they had been cruel. The first few days, the hurt was a physical presence, a weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I'd find myself replaying my father's words, the casual, dismissive tone that had sliced me so cleanly. Barely finished school, each time the memory was a fresh wound. I felt the sting of shame, the hot flush of anger, and the deep, cold sorrow of realizing that the people who were supposed to be my biggest champions saw me as a disappointment. But then something began to shift. The crushing weight started to feel less like a burden and more like an anchor I had finally cut loose. The silence, once a symbol of my exclusion, became a space I could fill with my own thoughts, my own peace. I no longer checked my phone with that familiar jolt of anxiety, bracing for a backhanded compliment or an unflattering comparison to Liam. I worked, I ate, I slept, and for the first time in a long time, the narrative in my head was my own. The freedom was intoxicating. I realized how much energy I had been expending trying to perform for an audience that had long since left the theater. The constant, low-level hum of striving for their approval had been the soundtrack to my life, and in its absence, I could finally hear my own music. And I had so much to celebrate. My ceremony, as I had so vaguely put it to my father, was a gross understatement. It wasn't a graduation. It was bigger, so much bigger. 3 years ago, after leaving my soul-crushing job at a corporate tech firm where I was just another cog in the machine, I poured every penny of my savings and every ounce of my energy into developing an application. It was called ConnectAid, a logistics and volunteer management platform designed specifically for small, underfunded nonprofit organizations. These charities often struggled with outdated systems, using convoluted spreadsheets and endless email chains to coordinate aid, donations, and volunteers. My app streamlined everything into one intuitive, secure, and affordable platform. The first year was brutal. I lived on instant noodles and coffee, coding for 18 hours a day in my tiny apartment. I was rejected by dozens of investors who didn't see the market potential in helping charities. My own father had scoffed at the idea. "So you're building a website for soup kitchens? Is there any money in that, Maya?" He didn't understand that it wasn't about the money. It was about creating something that mattered. But then it started to work. A local animal shelter adopted the platform and saw their volunteer coordination efficiency increase by 70%. They told a food bank who told a literacy program. Word of mouth was a powerful thing. Within 2 years, ConnectAid was being used by over 500 nonprofits across the country. 6 months ago, on a whim, I submitted my work to the National Innovation Foundation. I filled out the application late one night, fueled by caffeine and doubt, never imagining I'd hear anything back. Then, in April, an email with a subject line that made my heart stop. Congratulations, 2025 National Innovator of the Year. I had won not just in a small business category, the Innovator of the Year. It came with a significant grant for my company and a formal awards gala in my own city. I was to be the keynote honoree. It was the single greatest achievement of my life, a validation of every late night, every sacrifice, every time I had backed myself when no one else would. My initial plan, my secret, hopeful dream, was to reveal it to my family at the ceremony. I had imagined buying them all tickets, watching their faces as my name was called as I walked onto that stage. I pictured my father's stunned expression, my mother's tears, real tears of pride this time. I thought this they will finally have to acknowledge. This is a success even they can't downplay. But after the incident in the garage, that dream dissolved. Sharing my victory with them now would feel tainted. It wouldn't be a joyous surprise, it would be a gotcha, a petty, triumphant slam dunk. It would be using my success as a weapon, and my achievement deserved more than to be ammunition in a pathetic family feud. So I made a new plan. The ceremony would be for me. I went shopping and bought a dress, not a demure, please like me dress, but a bold emerald green gown that made me feel powerful. I started writing my acceptance speech, and the words flowed easily. I wrote about passion, about the power of technology to do good, about ignoring the naysayers who tell you your path is invalid. I thanked my mentors from technical college, the nonprofits who first believed in me, and the two close friends who had been my personal cheerleading squad through it all. I did not write my family's names. In the quiet of those 2 weeks, I was grieving the family I wished I had, but I was also celebrating the woman I had become without them. I was preparing for my big night, a night that was no longer about proving them wrong, but about proving myself right. It happened on a Saturday, exactly 2 weeks and one day after the garage confrontation. The day of Liam's graduation dinner had come and gone. I saw the pictures my mom eventually posted on her personal social media, the family smiling around a long table, Liam holding up a glass, my father looking proud enough to burst. I felt a familiar pang, but it was distant now, like an echo from a long way off. I was moving on. That Saturday morning was peaceful. I went for a long run, enjoying the crisp autumn air. I came home, showered, and settled onto my couch with a fresh pot of coffee and my laptop, ready to put the finishing touches on my speech for the gala, which was now less than a week away. My apartment felt like a sanctuary, a bubble of calm I had carefully constructed. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from a social media app, one I rarely checked but kept for the sake of staying loosely connected to extended family. Chloe Daniels tagged you in a post. Chloe was my cousin, my mom's sister's daughter. We were friendly in that way cousins often are, exchanging pleasantries at holidays, liking each other's photos, but not deeply involved in each other's lives. She was a generally sweet, enthusiastic person who worked in marketing and was always attending some conference or networking event. Curious, I tapped the notification. The app opened and my breath caught in my throat. The picture was a selfie. There was Chloe grinning from ear to ear, giving a big thumbs up to the camera, but it was the background that made the world tilt on its axis. She was standing in the vast, sunlit atrium of the city's main convention center, and behind her, suspended from the ceiling, was a banner. A massive, professionally designed banner at least 20 feet tall. On that banner was a photograph of me. It was a professional headshot I had taken a few months ago, one where I looked confident and happy. My name was printed below it in huge, bold letters, Maya JNSEN, and beneath my name the tagline, National Innovator of the Year. Keynote honoree at the 2025 Innovation Gala. The photo was so large, so public, so undeniably real. It was one thing to know about the award, to read the email and prepare a speech. It was another thing entirely to see my own face displayed like that, a monument to a success my family believed was impossible. My eyes scanned Chloe's caption and my heart began to pound. OMG, look who's famous, walking through the convention center for a marketing summit, and I see this. So incredibly proud of my amazing cousin Maya Jensen, National Innovator of the Year. That is huge. Can't believe you didn't tell us about this. You are a total rock star. Innovator of the Year, proud cousin, tech queen family. She had tagged everyone, my mom, my dad, my brother Liam, my aunts, my uncles, the whole clan. Oh. I stared at the screen, my coffee forgotten. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash I was powerless to stop. I could see the likes trickling in. A wow from my Aunt Carol, a string of clapping emojis from Uncle Gene, and then the comment I had been dreading, it was from my mother Susan. It wasn't a congratulations or a so proud, it was just 3 words. Oh, what is this? A moment later, a second comment appeared beneath it, also from her. Amaya's call me. I felt a wave of nausea. This was it. The secret was out, not in a controlled, dignified way of my choosing, but through a chaotic public explosion. Chloe hadn't done it to be malicious. She was genuinely excited, and in her world, a success like this was something to be shouted from the rooftops. She had no idea she had just lit a match and tossed it into the powder keg of our family's dysfunction. My fingers trembled as I put the phone down on the table, face down, as if that could stop what was coming. But it was too late. The bubble had been popped. The quiet was over, and I knew with a sinking certainty that the onslaught was about to begin. My phone, which I had placed face down on the coffee table, began to vibrate. It didn't stop. It was a relentless, angry buzzing like a trapped hornet. The screen lit up with my mother's contact photo. I watched it go to voicemail. A second later, it started ringing again, then a third time. When the calls finally stopped, the texts began. A rapid-fire volley of messages, each one more frantic than the last. Mom, what is this? Mom, Maya, Chloe posted a picture. Mom, is that real? Mom, why didn't you say anything? Mom, call me right now, this isn't funny. I stared at the messages, my stomach churning. There was no joy in them, no pride, only confusion morphing into accusation. Why didn't you tell us? The question was a weapon designed to shift the blame onto me, to paint me as the secretive, difficult one. Before I could even process my mother's digital meltdown, a new call came through, my father. My thumb hovered over the decline button and pressed it firmly. It felt like a small act of rebellion. He immediately tried again. I declined it again. A voicemail notification popped up. Then a text from him. It was terse, demanding, just like him. Dad, Susan is hysterical. Call your mother. No congratulations. No, is this true? Just an order. I was still the child to be managed, the problem to be solved. Then came the message from the golden child himself, Liam. Liam, yo, what's that thing Chloe posted? Are you getting an award or something? Dad is freaking out, lols. The lol was what did it. The casual amusement, the complete detachment from the reality of the situation. To him, this was just another bit of family drama, a spectacle to be observed from his comfortable, protected throne. I stood up from the couch and walked to the kitchen, my hands shaking. I poured myself a glass of water, the cool glass a small comfort against my clammy skin. I felt a bizarre cocktail of emotions, a surge of angry adrenaline, a grim sense of vindication, and a deep, penetrating wave of anxiety. This was what I had wanted to avoid. This chaotic, demanding, self-centered reaction was precisely why I had chosen to keep my success to myself. They weren't celebrating me, they were reacting to being left out of the loop. I made a decision. I was not going to respond, not yet. They had left me in silence for 2 weeks, content in their judgment of me. They could sit in their own confusion for a little while. I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb, silencing the incessant buzzing. But I couldn't bring myself to turn it off completely. Some part of me needed to watch it unfold. Over the next few hours, the tenor of the messages began to change. The initial shock and demand for answers slowly morphed into a clumsy attempt at praise, as if they were realizing the sheer scale of what they had missed. Mom, Maya, sweetie, I looked it up online. The National Innovation Award. Honey, that's incredible. We are so proud of you. Please call us. We want to hear all about it. The word sweetie felt like a lie on my screen. She hadn't called me that in years. Dad, Maya, I may have seen the website for this award. It seems quite prestigious. A significant achievement. Your mother and I are very impressed. We had no idea you were working on something of this magnitude. We had no idea. It was a confession disguised as a compliment. They had no idea because they had never bothered to ask. They had never shown enough interest to listen. My little website for soup kitchens had been a joke to him. Now that it had a prestigious award attached to it, it was suddenly a work of magnitude. The most surreal messages were the voicemails. I listened to them with a kind of morbid fascination. My mother's voice was tight with forced enthusiasm, papering over the panic. Maya, darling, it's Mom, just saw Chloe. Ease post and wow, just wow, we need to celebrate. We'll throw you a party, a bigger one than Liam's. Just call me back, sweetie, okay? My father's voicemail was even more telling. He sounded flustered, a rare thing for the unflappable Mark Jensen. Maya, it's your father. It seems we've had a misunderstanding. This award, this is a very big deal. We should have known. You should have told us. Call me back so we can discuss this. Discuss this like it was a business transaction that had gone awry. The onslaught continued into the evening. Texts from aunts who had once given me sympathetic, pitying looks at Christmas. A gushing email from an uncle who had advised me to get a stable government job 3 years ago. The family narrative was being frantically rewritten in real time. Maya, the directionless dropout, was being erased. In her place was Maya, the hidden genius, the tech prodigy. I felt like a spectator at my own life. They weren't proud of me. They were dazzled by the banner, the formal title, the public validation. Their respect wasn't earned through years of my hard work. It was unlocked by a third-party endorsement. The hypocrisy was so blatant, so staggering, that it almost became comical. They hadn't wanted me at their table to celebrate a bachelor's degree, but now they wanted to throw me a party for an achievement they didn't even know existed that morning. I let my phone charge on the counter, its screen dark and silent for now. The storm was raging outside my little bubble of peace, but for the first time I felt completely safe inside. They could call and text and email all they wanted. They were no longer calling the girl who was desperate for their approval. That girl was gone. They were about to meet the woman who didn't need it anymore. For 2 days I maintained my silence. I let their messages pile up, a digital monument to their panic. I watched as their tone shifted from demanding to pleading to something that almost resembled remorse. It was a fascinating, if painful, study in human behavior, but I knew it couldn't last. The gala was in 3 days, and the last thing I wanted was for them to cause a scene by showing up unannounced at my apartment, or even worse, at the event itself. I had to face them. I had to set the new rules of engagement. I finally sent a single, concise text to the family group chat. I will meet you for coffee tomorrow at 10 a.m., the Daily Grind on Elm Street. We can talk then. It was a neutral location, public and impersonal. It was on my terms. The replies were instant. Mom, of course, sweetie will be there. Dad, 10 a.m. is confirmed. Liam, K, see you there. The next morning, I walked into the Daily Grind feeling a sense of calm I hadn't expected. I had rehearsed nothing. My only goal was to be honest, to speak from the heart of the woman I was now, not the wounded child I had been. They were already there, huddled together at a table in the corner, looking terribly out of place. My father, in his pressed shirt, looked stiff and uncomfortable. My mother was wringing her hands, her face etched with anxiety. And Liam was slouched in his chair, scrolling on his phone, radiating an aura of profound boredom. They all looked up as I approached, their expressions a mixture of relief and apprehension. Maya, my mother breathed, standing to give me a hug I did not return. I simply took my seat across from them. The awkward silence was broken by my father clearing his throat. Maya, he began, trying to sound authoritative but coming off as strained. We are so incredibly proud of you. This award is just fantastic news. It's more than fantastic, Mark, it's brilliant. My mother chimed in, her voice unnaturally high. A keynote speech, my daughter the keynote speaker, why on earth didn't you tell us? We would have been shouting it from the rooftops. There it was again, the accusation disguised as a question. I took a slow sip of the coffee I'd picked up at the counter. I really looked at them one by one. Why didn't I tell you? I repeated, my voice even and low. Let's talk about that. When was the last time any of you asked me a single specific question about my work and actually listened to the answer? Silence, my father shuffled his feet, my mother stared at her hands. I tried to tell you, I continued, my gaze steady. For years, I tried to tell you when I started the company, I tried to tell you when I got my first client, I tried to tell you about the challenges and the small victories, but you were never interested. Dad, I said, looking directly at him, you asked me if there was any money in it and then immediately changed the subject to Liam's grades. He flinched, a faint flush creeping up his neck. And Mom, I said, turning to her, you would just nod and say, that's nice, dear, before asking if Liam needed his laundry done. And Liam, I glanced at my brother who had finally looked up from his phone, you've never once asked me what my company even does. Liam shrugged, a gesture of pure indifference. It's some computer stuff, right? I'm not a tech guy. No, I said, a humorless smile touching my lips. You're not, but you're my brother. You're supposed to be family. I let that hang in the air for a moment before turning my attention back to my father. 3 weeks ago, you stood in your garage and told me I wasn't welcome at a family celebration. You said, and I quote, we didn't think you'd be comfortable since you barely finished school yourself. My father opened his mouth, his face pleading. Maya, that was just a stupid joke, a bit of fatherly ribbing. I didn't mean it, not really. Was it a joke when you missed my state science fair ceremony for Liam's soccer game? I asked quietly. Was it fatherly ribbing when you bought him a car and told me to get a job? Was your pride in his A+ on a midterm and your complete dismissal of my first ever company a joke too? My mother started to cry, soft, gulping sounds. We didn't realize, she whispered. We never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said, and my voice was without malice, a simple statement of fact. You did hurt me for years, and the only thing that's changed between then and now is that some foundation put my face on a banner. My success didn't become real to you until someone else validated it. Your pride is 2 weeks late and a banner too public. I leaned forward slightly. You didn't want me at your table, so you can't be surprised that I didn't save you a seat at mine. The finality in my tone seemed to land with the force of a physical blow. My father sagged in his chair, the manufactured authority gone, replaced by what looked like genuine shame. My mother wept openly. Even Liam looked uncomfortable, finally grasping that this was more than just some drama. So what now? My father asked, his voice raspy. The gala, can we come? It was the question I had been waiting for, the question that would define everything. I looked at their faces, the faces of the people whose love I had craved my entire life, and I felt a strange sense of detachment. The power they held over me was gone. I'll have to think about it, I said, and for the first time it was the complete truth. The day of the gala, I woke up feeling a sense of nervous excitement that was entirely my own. It wasn't tied to my family's approval or their potential reaction. It was the pure, unadulterated thrill of being recognized for my work, for the thing I had built from nothing. My phone remained silent that morning. After our coffee shop confrontation, the barrage of messages had stopped. I had left them in limbo, and it seemed they were finally, belatedly, learning that my time and my decisions were not theirs to command. As I was doing my makeup, I made my decision. To bar them from the ceremony felt like a continuation of the war, another battle in a long and exhausting conflict. But to welcome them with open arms felt like a betrayal of myself. I needed a third option. I picked up my phone and sent a text to my father's number. It included a screenshot of 2 digital tickets. The message was brief. The ceremony is at 7 p.m. Here are 2 tickets for you and Mom. You are welcome to attend as guests. Please do not come backstage or try to find me beforehand. I will see you after. I didn't offer a ticket to Liam. That was a conscious choice. This moment was between me and my parents, the originators of the hurt. Liam was a symptom, but they were the cause. His exclusion was a quiet, pointed statement that things would never be the same again. My father replied almost instantly, "Thank you, Maya, we understand." When my friends arrived to help me get ready, the atmosphere was joyful and celebratory. They zipped up my emerald green dress, helped me with my hair, and toasted me with champagne. They had seen my struggle up close, had listened to my tearful calls, and celebrated my tiny breakthroughs. Their pride was real and had been there all along. Being surrounded by that genuine support, I felt invincible. Walking into the convention center was surreal. The banner with my face still hung in the atrium, but now it was surrounded by hundreds of people in formal attire. The air buzzed with energy and anticipation. I was whisked away by the event organizers, introduced to other award winners, and led to the green room. The ceremony itself was a blur of lights and applause. I watched from the wings as leaders in my field spoke about the future of technology. Then, the foundation's president took the stage to present the final award of the night. And a testament to the power of a single idea to change thousands of lives, she was saying. This year's Innovator of the Year is not just a brilliant coder, but a true humanitarian. Her platform, Connectaid, has revolutionized the nonprofit sector. Please join me in giving a huge con. Congratulations to Maya Jensen. Walking out onto that stage, into the warmth of the spotlight, was the most terrifying and exhilarating moment of my life. The applause was a wave of sound that washed over me. I scanned the vast, darkened audience, and for a fleeting moment I saw them. My parents, sitting several rows back, looking small and anonymous in the crowd. My mother was clutching my father's arm, and both of them were staring at me with expressions I had never seen before. A mixture of awe, regret, and profound, undeniable pride. I stepped up to the podium, my hands steady on its edges. "Thank you," I began, my voice clear and strong. "Thank you to the National Innovation Foundation. To stand here tonight is an honor I never dared to imagine." I spoke about my journey. I talked about the power of finding a problem you care about and dedicating yourself to solving it. I talked about the nonprofits who do the real work on the ground every single day. I thanked my friends by name for their unwavering belief in me. I thanked my professors from the technical college who taught me how to build things that last. I did not thank my family, but I ended my speech with a thought that was, in its own way, for them. Often the path to doing something meaningful is not the most traditional one, I said, looking out into the darkness where I knew they sat. It can be lonely. People you respect might not understand your vision. They might tell you it's not a real job or that your goals are foolish. But if you believe in what you're doing, you have to learn to be your own champion. Your validation has to come from within, because in the end, that's the only approval that truly matters. The applause was thunderous. As I walked off stage, clutching the heavy glass award, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I had done it, and I had done it for me. After the ceremony, at the reception, they found me. They approached cautiously as if I were a wild animal they were afraid of spooking. Liam was not with them. "Maya," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were magnificent, absolutely magnificent." My mother's eyes were red-rimmed. "Oh, honey," she whispered, reaching out as if to touch my arm but stopping herself. "Your speech, we are so, so sorry for everything." It was the apology I had waited my whole life to hear. It was real, I could see that. But hearing it now, I realized something profound. It didn't fix everything. It couldn't erase the years of neglect or the deep-seated patterns of their behavior. It was a start, but it was not a finish line. I gave them a small, genuine smile. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "It means a lot that you were here to see this." I accepted their apology, but I didn't offer them the easy absolution they craved. I didn't say, "It's okay," or "All is forgiven." I just stood there in my beautiful dress, holding my award, and let them see the woman I had become, not in spite of them, but separate from them. The new reality had begun. In the weeks and months that followed the gala, a strange and quiet transformation took place within my family. The old dynamic with me on the outside looking in, desperately trying to get their attention, was completely upended. The roles were now reversed. I was at the center, and they were the ones orbiting me, cautiously trying to find a way back in. The phone calls changed. My mother would call not to give me unsolicited advice or to talk about Liam, but to ask, "How did that big server migration go, honey? You mentioned it last week." She was trying, in her own clumsy way, to learn the language of my world. My father, once so dismissive, began to treat my career with a newfound reverence. He forwarded me articles about the tech industry. He'd call and say, "I was talking to a client whose business could really use a system like yours. Should I give him your company's information?" He was trying to be helpful, to contribute, to show that he finally saw my work as legitimate. The most shocking change came from Liam. A month after the gala, he called me, not texted, but called. "Hey Maya," he said, sounding uncharacteristically hesitant. "So, I was thinking, I have this business degree now, but I'm not really sure what I want to do. I was wondering if, maybe, I could buy you lunch and you could tell me about how you started your company, like for real." It was the first time in our lives he had ever treated me like an older sister he could learn from. It was the first time he had acknowledged my path as one worth emulating. I agreed to the lunch, and we had a conversation that was more honest and direct than any we'd had in the previous 2 decades. But this new attention, this flood of respect, did not magically heal the old wounds. It was like they had finally started watering a plant they had neglected for years, only to find that it had already grown strong and tall by S. Eking its own sunlight, I was polite, I was kind, I answered their questions and took their calls. I had lunch with my brother, but I kept a small, crucial part of myself separate. The part that they had hurt was now protected by a gentle but firm boundary they were not allowed to cross. I no longer spent holidays anxiously hoping for a sign of their approval. I attended family gatherings on my own terms, arriving when I wanted and leaving when I felt my energy wane. I no longer needed to perform. I was just Maya. My value was no longer up for debate. I came to understand that their behavior had never truly been about me or Liam. It was about their own fears. My father, a man who found security in tradition and predictable paths, was terrified by the risks I took. He championed Liam because Liam's journey, university, business degree, corporate ladder, was the one he understood. My success, achieved on a path he couldn't comprehend, had initially been an indictment of his worldview. Only when it was validated by a source he respected, a national foundation, the media, could he finally allow himself to be proud. It was a weakness in him, not a failing in me. My relationship with my family isn't perfect now. There's an underlying sadness for the years we lost, for the support I should have had and never did, but it's healthier, it's more honest. I haven't cut them off, but I have, as I once told a friend, demoted them. They are no longer the board of directors for my life, whose approval I need for every decision. They are now simply members of my extended family, people I care for, but whose opinions no longer have the power to build me up or tear me down. My self-worth is my own now, forged in late nights and quiet determination. I am successful, I am happy, and I am free. The future of our family is uncertain, and the trust will take a long time to rebuild. But whatever happens, it will happen on my terms. I am the narrator of my own story now, and I finally love how it sounds. So, to anyone listening who has ever felt overlooked or undervalued by the people who are supposed to love you most, please hear this. Do not shrink yourself to fit into their small view of the world. Your path is valid, your dreams matter, become your own champion. Your moment will come not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. And that feeling is worth more than any apology or round of applause you could ever receive.